time to go out to the phone line where we bring in Brian Toohey, the author of The Fix Is In. How you doing, Brian?
Fine. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to think here, Brian. What set you off, or what made you write The Fix Is In?
I was tired of the sports leagues lying to me about drugs in the game, gamblers, criminals playing the game, and I started to believe that if they were lying to me about everything else, everything surrounding the game, that they were likely lying to me about their main product, which is the game themselves. And I think what happened is sports went from being sports to being show business. And because it is show business today, it's open to a lot more manipulation than people believe.
Do you see one sport over the other as far as show business goes? Because certainly in your book, I mean, you definitely cover a lot in The Fix Is In with the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and NASCAR. But do you see one over the top of any other?
Well, I think the one you could probably point the biggest finger at would probably be the NBA. And that's because you did have the whistleblowing that came from Tim Donaghy, the disgraced NBA ref who got busted by the FBI and who would still be in the NBA today if it wasn't for the FBI busting him. And he basically told the FBI that the NBA, through the referees, manipulates games in order to get, better playoff matchups and games, 6 and 7 to occur within the playoffs.
Now, in your book, The Fix Is In, once again, Brian Toohey joining us, the author of The Fix Is In. In your book, you're not just writing here, Brian, like, oh, here's your thoughts and blah, blah, blah. This is what I see every night. I mean, you actually have some facts about things that have happened in the sports world.
Oh, definitely. I spent about 2 years researching the book, and everything in it, as far as I can tell, is true, based off of ESPN, Sports Illustrated, the Associated Press, different books that have been written by former athletes and investigative reporters. And I basically lined up all those facts in the book and said, if all these things are true, then why wouldn't my conclusion, which is that games have been fixed, also be true? I mean, people may disagree with it, but they can't disagree with the facts that lead up to it.
Now, when you watch, let's say, an NFL game, a regular season NFL game, are there certain things that you are keeping an eye on now after writing this or before you wrote it?
Not really. I don't think every game is fixed by any means in any sport. I think what occurs is that leagues will see storylines develop, things like, the New Orleans Saints after the hurricane, or, the Lakers and, the Celtics in the finals and that sort of thing. And I think what they see there is opportunity and say, hey, maybe if we, do this or do that, we can get these storylines to go on further than they naturally should occur. And I don't think it's something that people can actually see when they're watching a game, because you can't tell if a player makes a bad play or if a referee makes a bad call. You can't necessarily say, oh, well, that's where the fix is. I mean, it could just be a bad play or a bad call. I think what you have to look at then is what comes afterwards, what, the TV ratings, the profits that these leagues are making off of these games. And that's where I think you can start putting two together and see that perhaps something else was going on.
I was going to say, in your book, The Fix Is In, it's not all about, look, there's a fix here in the third quarter of this game. It has a lot to do with the television networks as well.
Yes, because they're what basically fund professional sports these days. I mean, people, I don't think they completely understand it or think about it. The fact that, like, the NFL makes nearly $10 billion a season, but literally $6 billion of that comes from the television networks. It's not from people, paying for the tickets or the T-shirts or the hot dogs. Most of the money these leagues are making are coming from television networks, from ESPN, from ABC, NBC. And without those things, a league like the NFL would not exist as it does today.
How much time did you mull it over after watching all these games? And like you said, you know what, these leagues are lying to me. How long did you mull it over before you actually wrote this book?
Well, the tipping point for me personally came when the Patriots won the Super Bowl in 2001, right after 9/11. And that's when I said, there's coincidences and then there's coincidences. And to me, the Patriots winning after what occurred in this country really made me go, it just didn't seem right. And so I started, looking at these things as time progressed. And then, like I say, about 2-3 years ago, so I said, all right, enough is enough. And I sat down and started researching and writing the book.
Well, what kind of facts do we have behind that? The Patriots winning after 9/11, as far as conspiracy or manipulation goes.
The problem is the burden of proof. I mean, a lot of things I have are circumstantial, and I'll admit that openly. But what happens is when I've investigated this, I talked to like a former FBI agent who investigated sports bribery, which are crimes about fixing games, basically. And he said proof of these things are very hard to come by unless you have somebody that openly admits that they did it or were involved in it, or they had like a wiretap on somebody and the FBI overheard these things. The FBI actually had an incredibly difficult time proving that these fixes actually occurred because it's all behind closed doors. It's all secret meetings. It's all very easy actually to keep quiet. You only need, basically two people to fix a game, the player or referee or coach who's involved and the person who basically either pays them or instructs them what to do. So you could fix a game literally with two people. So to actually pin down proof is incredibly difficult. So what, again, I do is I try to take all the circumstantial evidence that surrounds it and said, if all these things are true, could it possibly be, in effect, a fix that occurred?
Once again, Brian Toohey, the author of The Fix Is In, joining us here on 640 Sports. Without spoiling the book, because we certainly want people to go out there and grab it, can you give us a certain thing in the book, let's say with Major League Baseball, one certain event that's kind of on the top of your head that you would like to bring up?
Well, baseball, I think, has the one thing that's proven, and that was collusion that occurred in the mid-1980s, something that a lot of fans forgot about or don't even know about. And that's when literally the commissioners sat down every owner in a room, and they said, in order for us to make more money, is we have to stop paying free agents the money they're asking. And that's exactly what happened. For 3 seasons, all the owners, and that's the owners, the GMs, the people under them, said, we're not signing any free agents. And the league did that for 3 years, and because they did it so obviously, the union sued the league and won a $280 million settlement against them. But it proves that these conspiracies can actually happen because that was a proven conspiracy.
Do you feel like a lot of this stuff is still going on, or it's kind of simmering down a little bit?
No, I believe it's still going on because I think, unfortunately, the sports media, for the most part, does not investigate these things. I don't think they can because many times a beat reporter can lose access to a team or to players for writing the wrong type of article, and it's happened numerous occasions. So I think the sports media is what ESPN gets blamed for a lot, is that whole rah-rah spirit. They want all the positive things and totally ignore the negative because you never see sports writers or reporters breaking stories about guys who are, drug addicts or gamblers or these sort of things. It always happens after the fact, after the, police or the feds bust these guys, then those stories come out, but never beforehand. They're never proactive. They're always just reactive.
Once again, Brian Toohey, the author of The Fix Is In, joining us here on 640 Sports. Brian, when somebody's done reading your book, The Fix Is In, what do you think the majority of the readers have in their mind? What do you think their thoughts are when they're finished?
Well, from what I've gotten in terms of feedback, is it definitely changes the way people think about sports. And I think that's what I tried to do, is I tried to say, hey, take your fan hat off and look at these things more objectively. Look at them as the big businesses they are. Because if I was, railing against something like BP or GM or Goldman Sachs or some other, Enron, some other big business and said, hey, there's some things going on behind the scenes, a lot of people would instantly agree with me. But if I bring up something about the NFL or the NBA, it's almost like because the teams become a part of them, they're like, whoa, you can't say that about the NFL, you can't say that about the NBA. Well, yeah, I can, because they are big businesses, and they're out to make as much profit as they possibly can. And I think that's what fans need to do, is they need to looking at this objectively and going, if they are out to make all this money, which is why they play the games, then perhaps there are things going on behind the scenes and perhaps right out in front of you on the field that you need to be more attentive to.
I feel like regardless, Brian, of what's put out there, whatever people know, if people know that baseball players are on steroids, if somebody knows somebody's using some sort of enhancing drug in another sport, I still feel, Brian, like fans, they just kind of put that fan hat back on regardless of what you tell them and go to the games.
Well, they do, and I can understand that because it is entertainment. It's a great way to escape for 3 hours from, the problems of your life and those sort of things. But if the leagues are, in fact, lying to you, like, again, in baseball, you had steroids where Baseball Writers of America basically ignored the steroid era for 15 years without writing an article about it. You have to think, well, am I really investing in something that is, in fact, pure? Or do enough fans take it as just entertainment and leave it at that? But it seems like fans, especially sports fans, take it almost personally. I mean, they say I when they refer to a team, or we, as if they're on the team, which they're not. You're just a fan. You're just throwing money at these guys. And I think you have to be more attentive to what you're putting your money and time and effort into.
You know, I found it interesting in reading parts of the book, Brian, that, and I've been paying attention to this, when teams, like you said in the book, when teams are actually losing, people will call in and say they, and when teams are actually winning, they'll say we, like they'll take part of it.
Yeah, they, like I say, it becomes part of your personal identity. You get some, benefit from the team you root for winning. It actually helps your own, personal status and your own, belief of how you are yourself. And it's something, again, that's just kind of odd. It's a psychological effect that they've proven occurs, but it's hard for people to shake, and that's why I think a lot of times they let sports get away with the crimes they kind of do, because they do have such a personal attachment to them.
Like Detroit Lions fans, Brian, are always saying they. They never say we.
Yeah, but the funny thing is about football is despite like a team like the Lions being as bad as they are, because of the profit sharing, the revenue sharing in football, when a team like the Patriots went undefeated and made all that money, actually that revenue is shared. 80% of the revenue the NFL makes is shared among all the teams. So even a team doing as horribly as the Lions are, they're still making a lot of money because so much of the revenue is shared. They're all in it together.
Brian, if people want to pick up the Fixes In, once again, it's the showbiz manipulations of the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and NASCAR. How could they go ahead and grab a copy?
They can either go to my website, which is thefixesin.net, or you can find it at Amazon, Borders, Barnes & Noble, anywhere great books are sold.
Brian Toohey, the author of The Fixes In, thanks for joining us this afternoon on 640, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
You got it, man. Have a good one.